Chair recognizes Mr. Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Milley, good to see you again. General McKenzie, I was looking over your long and distinguished careers, and what I noticed was you were both on active duty just before I left active duty. General Milley, you were promoted to first lieutenant in 18 months. I didn't get that lucky, and I wasn't that good. You said something, General Milley, that I think was profound. You, in fairness to the United States military, there were no military mistakes while under military command in this case. And that brings a couple of questions. First of all, both of you during the day have said we should see more, we should hear more, and so on. If I could point out something to see if you've seen it, they've distributed it to you. The question is, here's a public log that shows a vast amount of a video that I haven't seen. I've not been made aware of it. Some of it is redacted, but most of it you can read what it says. And the timelines are pretty pronounced. Do you believe that, I mean, obviously that exists, this was a FOIA. Have you, either one of you, seen any of these videos, and do you think we should see them on the committee as a whole? General McKenzie?
So I've probably seen most of these videos at one time or another. I should certainly see no reason why you shouldn't see them. Okay,
it won't surprise you, we haven't. So when we became aware of it, I wanted to ask. I want to point out 211, 214, 217, and 223, General McKenzie. Do you recognize those, and are they of particular significance? Also 212 and 213.
I read the title, I understand what it says, I just can't associate it with a video.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll see them. General Milley, during your career rising through the ranks, I had 4 careers. One of them was here in Congress. So I do want to correct one thing you said, which is very unusual for a nobody private or captain to do, but we do have the jurisdiction. And you said it very well in your own statement, and I'd like to point it out for the Gold Star families that are here. This committee could, all or in part, change the question of who is in charge, Title 10 or not, in the case of an armed withdrawal. We could decide whether the chief of mission continues to be accountable to somebody back in Foggy Bottom, or whether you would have been in the direct chain going back to the Pentagon. We could put primary responsibility on the amount of forces necessary in each and every, and General McKenzie, you know your Marines and what they do. You know how many more we have after Benghazi. You know what happened because of Benghazi and what General Amos did. So for the Gold Star families, this committee does have at least most of the jurisdiction to decide whether or not a State Department that in our own investigation clearly made decisions that were counter to the safety of Americans there, counter to the safety of our allies, but not necessarily counter to their own safety, although in fairness, the decision not to move the embassy either out of the country or to the military base instead certainly contributed. So, General, both of you, General, and look, I have nothing but respect for your service and for the tough situation you both found yourself in this withdrawal. But I'm going to ask you to basically answer as much of a yes or no as you can. If you had had the authority to determine the continued presence, would it have been dramatically different from a standpoint of safety of American personnel?
Good. Let me make sure I understand the question. You're talking...
If you'd been told that we were withdrawing,
right,
would you have done it differently as a military man rather than the way it was done?
I would have begun sooner.
Would have begun sooner?
That's probably the principal thing I would have done. I would have begun much sooner than when we actually did.
And I would have, I would have brought the embassy and the State Department out with the military by the middle of July. That is what, if there was one thing, a do-over, you don't get do-overs in this stuff, but if there was a do-over, that would be it. And that point was debated and discussed and so on and so forth. But that is a, yes. To answer
Last question, Mr. Chairman, if I may just, If you had been given the opportunity to determine that you wanted Afghanistan to stay free and independent of the Taliban, would that have been possible during your chairmanship?
Well, I think that if you kept 2,500 as your men force, and it wasn't just any 2,500, this is a group of 2,500 that were very, very highly talented special forces. I think that group of 2,500, plus the NATO forces, plus the contractors, I believe to this day that the Afghan security forces and the Afghan government would not have collapsed. But I also believe, and I believe it would have happened, is that the war with the Taliban would have reopened. And that could have possibly meant another increase in forces. So if your purpose, the political strategic purpose made by policymakers is to withdraw, then the idea of keeping 2,500 with the possibility of even increasing is obviously at cross purposes.
So if I could surmise or summarize what you said, if we had had the same attitude in Afghanistan that we have till today in South Korea, that in fact, if there is an adverse combatant force that is unrelenting, you keep sufficient forces in order to prevent them from prevailing, even if it's more than half a century.
Well, I think that if your intent, your strategic intent is to prevent Afghanistan from becoming a platform for terrorism to strike the United States, and to do that, you've got a means, the government of Afghanistan, the Afghan security forces, and if you withdraw, they're going to collapse, then I think you either accept the risks of that collapse, and if you're going to do that and withdraw completely, then I agree 100% with what General McKenzie said earlier. You're going to have to withdraw quickly, fast. That includes your State Department folks, or make a decision to stay. It's a binary choice there. There's not a lot of gray in between. And I think that if you decide to stay, there's risks associated with that, and the likelihood that war again would start with the Taliban.
And the Marines
Gentleman's
concur
time
with
has
the Marines
expired.
concur with the Army in this case.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Miller-Meeks is recognized.
Oh, I didn't realize. Thank
We've
you.
been keeping a 5-minute.
I thought it was done. I thought it was. I
Okay.
thought it was the
All right.
closing act, Chairman.